be your host for the webinar. So I can see Janet is from Nairobi. Guys, type on the chats. I want to see where you guys are joining us from. I see Fatma from Mombasa. Yeah. I see Ishmael from Nairobi. I mean, so many people are from Nairobi here. Okay. All right. So awesome. So I see someone from Tanzania. Rehema, welcome. Karibu sana Rehema. Tunatumia English. I hope you will understand. Yeah. So yes. So CloudForceSKY is community of AWS cloud enthusiasts to promoting growth, learning, and networking opportunities for members. So if you want to check out more about our community, you can go to cloudforcesky.com. Links will be shared on the chats about CloudForceSKY. You can also follow us on our socials. We have a LinkedIn page. We also have a YouTube channel where this recording will be stored. So make sure you just go and check out some of that. Yeah, I can see so many people are joining us. I can see Steve from Burundi. I can see Ruben from Kapsabet. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So our webinar today will be focused on AWS Cloud Development Kit. I hope you guys know the AWS CDK. Yeah. So the AWS CDK is basically an open source framework that is offered by Amazon Web Services, and it empowers you guys as the developers, or maybe as a developer to be, for you to be able to describe cloud infrastructure using commonly used programming languages like Python, JavaScript, and maybe C# or Java. So it basically provides you with a means to programmatically create and manage resources following the best principles of infrastructure as code. So today we are joined with Felix. Felix is our presenter of the day. Felix Mulei is an AWS ReStart instructor. He's a very good AWS ReStart instructor. He's actually my teacher, and I'm so grateful for him. He's also an AWS solutions architect. So if you guys want to know how to architect your solutions, that's the go-to guy, right? So Felix, I hope you're on the call. Yeah. Hi, Felix.
Hi. Hi. How are you, Evans?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let me see. Do I have a video?
I don't know. You can take it out if you want. So as Felix is preparing his video and maybe his presentation, if you have questions, you can post them on the chat section. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be having a Q&A session for you guys so that you can direct the questions to either Felix or if you have any suggestions or opinions for the community, you can just type them out. And then during the end of the webinar, we'll address them promptly. So Felix, karibu sana. Yeah, karibu sana. This is your session. Please take over.
All right. Thank you very much, Evans. And good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. I know it's kind of late, but you did make the time to join us. So I'll be taking you through intro to AWS CDK. It's kind of a cool stuff, I think. When you try it, you're going to see that. But we're just going to be doing the basics and probably just try and see if we can do an example and see if we can create resources, maybe 1-2 resources, and see if it's going to work. So essentially, that is what we're going to be doing. For those seeing me the first time, probably the poster lied. This is how I look like. Yeah, this is how I look like now. That was a little bit sometimes back, a little bit hairy. But I hope, we're going to be having a good time. So I'll turn off my video, right? Or you want me to be on video alone? Which one do you prefer?
No, it's okay. It's okay, Felix. You can just for the bandwidth.
All right. Bandwidth is no problem. So
5G.
yeah, kinda. Be on video. All right. No worries. Okay, so I be on video. So let me then switch this tab to the other side so that I can be able to see. Yeah. All right. So allow me to share the screen. What's happening? Okay, just give me a second. I'll be sharing my screen and then we can get started. Should be up. Yeah. It should be up. Yeah. So, as I said, we're going to be looking at intro and probably some other time we're gonna get to see in-depth stuff of this. So, introduction to CDK. Cyrus. What's up? All right. Intro to CDK. Essentially, this is just a sister, or anytime you hear infrastructure as code, I know most of us tend to think of Terraform, CloudFormation, and probably the like. But you're going to find that CDK is not a field that is much explored, because I was looking online when I started, and because I wanted to focus on Python as the language of doing my CDK, and there weren't much resources online except just the documentation and a few other resources, so I couldn't find much help. But if you look at TypeScript, you're going to find people are doing something on TypeScript. So my focus today, and what I usually do when I'm using CDK, is usually Python. So for the demo, that probably an example that we're going to be doing, we will do it with Python. But it's not that much different from TypeScript, which is JavaScript. So what do you need for you to get started with CDK? Essentially, it's a terminal, because you're talking about infrastructure as code. You need to have an idea of CloudFormation, even though it's not needed, because what you're going to see, the CDK would essentially convert all your code into a CloudFormation template and then work on it. So you don't essentially need to know CloudFormation, but because you're going to see constructs, which are some of the things that are involved in CDK, you will just get to understand something about CloudFormation. Just looking at the chat box. And then something that you need to have an idea of is AWS, because you want to create resources using the AWS cloud. So if you're not aware of essentially what an instance is, you're going to find a challenge, because where do you get started? Am I breaking? Or it's Kefa? No, it's Kefa. Kefa. It's Kefa.
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah. So I was on AWS. So you need to have an idea of AWS resources. And it's not only CDK, but anytime you're using infrastructure as code, you essentially need to have an idea of AWS resources. Think about it. You want to create an EC2 instance. You have no idea what a security group is. Where do you get started? You can't. So you need to have an idea of AWS resources. and we are talking about AWS core resources. Just core depending on what you want to focus on, because as a dev, sometimes you want to focus on CI/CD tools on AWS. You might find that you're not working with other resources a lot. You can't know everything in AWS, but just the core services that you're going to be working with, it's usually a good way to have an idea on. So these are just the prerequisites. Just have a terminal. Whether you're using PowerShell, it's okay. If you're using a terminal from Linux, it's going to work. We'll also see on the terminal you need to install AWS CLI and Node, but we'll essentially see that in a moment. So, just about CDK. It's usually built on top of CloudFormation. And if you can look at what is here, we are saying when you write your code, because we're going to do stacks, and our code is going to be in a particular language, which could be, in this case, it's going to be Python. It's going to be synthesized, and a CloudFormation template is going to be created. So that's why we are saying it's built on top of our CloudFormation. We said we do not need to know the CloudFormation because the CDK will do all that work, synthesize whatever you've written, the code that you've written, and then give you a CloudFormation template, and then upload it on AWS and create the resources that are needed. You write your code using any of the languages that you might want to write with. We have Python, we have JavaScript, we have Java, Go, and you might be asking, why can't I use CloudFormation for this? Because it would still achieve the same thing. Probably it can. But if you think about logics, and logics, we are saying, if this happens, what next? For anybody who has done and worked with CloudFormation a lot, you're going to notice that is something that is missing. It's almost the same, but the logics are not there. The other good thing about using CDK when you're deploying your resources in AWS is you can do multi-environment deployments. And multi-environment, when we talk about that, we're just saying, let's say I'm using dev. So I have an environment that is called dev, where I want to deploy my resources, and then the other one is maybe tests. I can be able to create a CDK environment that can be able to do this for me. Can be able to create resources in the dev environment, and also create resources and then have them in the test environment. Just with the logics that we're going to apply, because now we are using a programming language, then it becomes easier to have control over these two. Multi-environment deployment, again, which is something that you might not find in CloudFormation. You can, because if you create one template, you will need to probably copy it and change a few things here and there. Then you can call that dev, and the other one you can call it test environment, or you can create your resources in the test environment. Once everything is as expected, then you can move all that and move it to the dev or production environment. So flow control, quite helpful when you're using CDK. And then the other thing is CDK is going to synthesize your code into a CloudFormation template and deploy it by creating stacks. Again, you're not the one to create the stack. Just using commands, you will be able to achieve all this. If you look at CloudFormation, you go to the console after you've written your template, and then you just form the stack. Or you can still be able to use the CLI to be able to deploy your stack using CloudFormation. Then the other limitation that I would tell you that it's not something that everybody wants to know is you have to use YAML when you're working with CloudFormation, or But here we are going to say, if you're working with CDK, look at whatever you have at your disposal. You do not need to learn something new. I know some of you, or I know majority of you, not some, majority of you have an idea of Python. When you want to learn, JSON YAML. When you want to learn something to do with, let's say, CloudFormation, you need to know YAML and JSON, YAML or JSON, just depending on what you want. But here is a programmer or a software dev who knows Python and they want to start working with the infrastructure as code. So again, they do not need to go and know something else that they might want to, they might need so that they can work with CDK. So CDK will just utilize the language that you know, and then you get started. Then the other thing that you need to be aware of, because we've said everything that we're going to be doing, it will be converted into a CloudFormation template, and then it's going to be uploaded to the CloudFormation interface. It's going to have CloudFormation limitations. So the limitations that are usually there in CloudFormation, like the amount of resources that you can be able to create, then the same is going to be tied to your CDK. So just note that, because we are using CloudFormation to be able to deploy our resources, the limitations that apply to CloudFormation would now come into our CDK. That's just something that you just need to note. So in this workflow here, we're having a user or a dev just writing their code in Python. That is their CDK, they're using Python. And we can say this is synthesize, you can say this is deploy. And then when they run synthesize command or deploy command, a template is going to be created in CloudFormation, stacks created, and then resources created. And this is on the fly when you run commands on the CLI. So that's now the other beauty of it. Again, I do not need to go to the console. Probably I'll need to go there to just check. You can also be able to request outputs from your terminal, instead of when you create a resource going to the console and probably I just want to check the IP address of my instance. I do not need to do that. I can be able to query the output from my CDK code. So a few terms that we can look at. One, we have the app. This is something that you're going to see a lot, and you can think of it as the composition of all the resources, because anytime you're running, you want to import all the resources that you've created into the app, and then the app will be able to deploy everything. For starters, as you're going to see, you don't need to change or make many alterations in your code. You can just get started, create your service that you want, and then you run, as you're going to see. And then we have stacks. And it's also the same as a stack in CloudFormation, and just a group of resources. When we create, even in CloudFormation, you're going to find that we create a stack, and resources are going to be created from the stack. But it's just a single unit of our deployment. And then we have the constructs, and this is now where you're going to be starting when you want to create your resource, because a construct, we can be able to create, let's say, an S3. There is the syntax that is there. For constructs, we have a different level of constructs, as we will see. But the most commonly used, and the one that you're going to use a lot, is L2, or just level 2 constructs. L1 is the one that started. L3 is the highest level of our constructs, which is kind of all resources chained together. The resources that work together, you can find them in L3 construct. But we're saying construct, it's where we are having the resources. So if I want to create an S3 bucket or an EC2, then I'll start with the EC2 construct. Import the EC2 construct and then start working with it. So this is, again, the same an explanation of the same. We can see the constructs here. When we import, let's say, SQS, then we can be able to use and create the SQS service in AWS. Lambda, you've used it. It can also be another construct. S3, DynamoDB, all those resources, as we will see. So it's not essentially a particular resource on its own, but it's everything that is needed to build that resource. So if you think of an EC2 instance, you're thinking of security group, a VPC, probably user data, availability zone, AMI. So a construct would be able to provide you with all those that are needed for you to create the resource. And then we have, so the template, as soon as you run synthesize, this is going to be created for you. You don't need to create this. We will see this. You don't need to create it. It's going to be created for you. So your work is just to work with the construct and define how your resources would be. If it's an SQS queue, how do you want it to be? You want it to be a FIFO, fast in, fast out queue, or how do you want it to be? So that's essentially what you're defining. A Lambda runtime, what do you want it to be? So you're just defining that, and then CDK will do all the other work. Again, languages that you can use, quite a variety of languages that are at your disposal for you to use. So let's have a look at the construct, because I did mention this, I've just mentioned this, that we have L1 construct, which are usually the low-level constructs, and they are similar to how you use CloudFormation. So you're going to find that they are mapped to how we use CloudFormation, and they usually have this prefix, CFN. So let's say you want to create a resource, probably it's an S3, it would be S3.CFN bucket, and then you can move from there depending on how you want. So it's low level as compared to the others, which is L2 and S3. Of late, you're going to find that we usually now have probably L2 constructs for all the resources. Previously, it wasn't the case, but nowadays, probably all the resources have the L2 constructs. L2, a little bit advanced, kind of easy to use. You're going to find that they usually give you much more control of what you want. And how are they abbreviated? So we do not have this CNF in level 2. So it's just S3.bucket, and then all the options that you want are presented to you. So it's kind of easy. We're going to be using this. L3, as I said, it's when you're thinking of the resources that work together. So resources that work together, developers have come up with a L3 construct so that it can be easy for you. So you want an ECS, and definitely with an ECS, you want an application load balancer, because you want to work with the Fargate service. So essentially that is chained together instead of you creating everything on its own and then linking it together, because that is what happens with L1. L2, it's kind of advanced, but not all the resources work together have this construct. It's just a few of them. So this is not commonly used, but this is the one that we will use a lot. So moving on, don't want to dwell so much on the theory because I know you want practicals for this. So how to get started with CDK? The first thing that you need to do is you need to install Node.js. So you need to have Node.js, whether you're running on Windows or you're running on Mac or you're running on Ubuntu. So you need to have Node.js. You also need to have AWS CLI. Version 2, it's good. I think we saw done with version 1. So just ensure that you're using version 2. Something else that you need to install, because I know you can install Node.js. You just need to go to the website, install Node.js. For CLI, it's just the normal one. Install AWS CLI version 2. And then you need to install AWS CDK toolkit. And this is the command, npm install -g for global, and then AWS -CDK. And one last thing that you need is an IDE, integrated development environment. I usually use VS Code when I'm writing much of this, so VS Code serves the purpose for me. And once you're done with that, you can install the AWS core services, or you can just be able to install them as soon as you creating your first aid application. You can just install them in a virtual environment or so. So this is essentially what you need. Just install Node.js, have CLI. You don't need a new CLI. If you've been in AWS and you've used the CLI before, you don't need to configure again. It would be intelligent enough to pick the credentials that you have here or in the CLI that you are using. So essentially, you don't need to do a completely new setup. It's only Node.js that is needed, AWS toolkit, and I know probably you have an IDE. Again, you don't need this. So you also need to run this command, pip install aws-cdk.com. So let's have a view of some of the most useful commands that you might be able to work with. We have CDK init because you want to initialize. You remember, like when you're running Git init, you want to initialize Git. So this is also what you usually run. And the language you specify, because we've said there are so many languages that you can make use of. Now the question would be, where do I choose to work with Python or Node.js, or let's say Java? At what point? So this is the point. At the point when you just want to get started. Minimum specs, no minimum specs. As long as your device can be able to support, let's say, the IDE, and it can install Node.js, you're good to go. So there are no minimum specs, but I've seen from a 4 GB RAM onwards, usually works well. 4 GB RAM, I think, would be good. Because again, you're installing very few dependencies. Essentially what we are saying, as you're going to see, we're just installing Node, probably you have the CLI, and then you're installing the toolkit. No, it's not like Docker. So this is where you choose the language. You specify the language. After you do that, you have the default application downloaded, and then you can start making the changes depending on how you want, using the constructs to create the resources that you want. Once you're done with that, you can run Bootstrap. And what Bootstrap does, it is going to create the environment in AWS, like prepare the environment. And when I say prepare, what happens with CDK is that anytime you want to run CDK, or because you want to be running CDK, it's going to create an S3 bucket in your account on the region that you will be operating in. Let's say you want to be working in US East 1. That is the region that is configured on your terminal. Then it's going to create a bucket in that region. The first time that you're working with CDK, it's the only time you need to run Bootstrap. It's not like every single time you're running a resource. No, that bucket and the environment is usually prepared the first time you're working with CDK, let's say in that region. So it's going to create a bucket and the IAM role and any other resource that might be required for you to work with CDK. But essentially, it's usually the bucket and a stack that can be used. And it's usually run this the first time that you're working with CDK, let's say in that region. So let's say I work with a CDK, I create a resource today, and I destroy the resources. The next time I'm coming back, which could be tomorrow, as long as I do not delete the bucket and the stack that has been created by Bootstrap, then I can always skip this process and run the other processes, which is essentially synth, deploy, and diff, and the others. When you run CDK destroy, it doesn't destroy this environment that was created at Bootstrap. And just to note, when we run CDK Bootstrap, it's not like it creates the resources. And I would want us to run even without any resource so that we can see what happens. And then when we destroy, we go and just have a look at again the environment, whether it's been destroyed. But we will just get to see this. This is what is usually just like initializing the environment, creating the S3 bucket that can be used to host everything, because you've seen with CloudFormation sometimes resources must be stored in an S3 bucket. But it's not like creating the resources. Let's say we want to create an EC2 instance, we want to create a VPC. Not really. We have CDK synth, which is essentially synthesize, and this is automatically it's going to convert the code that we've written in the language that you are using from that language now to a CloudFormation template. Again, you do not need to know how to read it or how to use it. It just does it for you. From there, you can be able to run deploy, and you can deploy your app or your resources in the region that you've configured. Let's say on the CLI, you've used US dist one, then that is where the resource is going to be deployed. So essentially, when you run this deploy, it would create another stack. Now the stack for the resources, because the first time we were just creating and initializing the environment that is going to host all our CDKs. But now when we run this deploy, it's specific to that app and the resources that you are creating. So it's when it's going to create, that CDK diff. It's the same as the diff when you're using CloudFormation. You just want to see the changes that we're going to be making, or the differences between what is in our environment and whatever we want to make a change, in case we've made a few changes on our code. So we want to see the differences, then we will do CDK diff just to see the changes, what is going to change. Destroy, it's just to delete the resources. So we're done with everything. Let's say we wanted to create a VPC and probably just do a few tests here and there. So once we are done, then we can be able to destroy the resources. Again, you just run CDK destroy. You don't need to go to the CloudFormation interface and delete your stack. From your terminal, you can just run CDK destroy, and then it's going to delete the resources. So before I open my VS Code, this is essentially what Bootstrap command is going to do for you. So it's going to create this environment in your AWS account in that particular region. So essentially a bucket and the roles that are required for you to work there. So this is essentially what it does. It's not creating other resources like, let's say, an EC2 instance, an S3, let's say DynamoDB, a VPC. No, it's essentially just initializing the environment that you're going to be working in AWS. So anybody with a question before we just move and switch to the terminal or our code editor and see what we can do? No questions. All right. So, all right. So the first thing that we need to do, we just need to create an empty folder. How you do it, it doesn't matter, because I'm on Windows. I think I can just create a folder the normal way, graphically. So I'll just create a folder. Let me just share this screen. It's taking ages to load. So this is where I work, CDK. So I'll just create a folder, any name is okay. Can name it. So let's start with S3. Seems kind of, so S3, and we can say S3 demo is the folder that we're going to be working in. So now I can open that folder from VS Code so that I can be able to work. So let me just do away with the slides. Looks good. So we should be having this. All right. So this is the folder. You see the folder that we just created. The folder that we just created, S3 demo. There is nothing in the folder. Niongeze folder. Okay, just give me a sec. Just give it a sec. Okay. Should be okay. Visible? Not visible. Give it a second. Give it a second. Okay. Somehow better. All right. Anytime I zoom this, it's getting out of. Let me see. All right. So let's first initialize or do the first command that we saw. We just want to get the environment. For those who have been using CloudFormation, you know that you start from scratch. You open your terminal, you start from scratch. So here, let me show you what happens. So we've said we want to run CDK in it, and then we want to do our app. What language are we using? We've said we want to use Python. So CDK init app, and then the language that we want to use, and then we run the command. So you can see what is happening. It's initializing all that. So downloading the files, you can see here, we have these files that have been downloaded. We have the first file, the folder, directory that is there. Let me just change this. We have this. We will get the stack that we will be modifying inside that. So it's usually named the same way as your directory. And then we have other files like here is the app. If you look at the app, you're going to find it's importing the stack from demo. Essentially, we're editing demo, but the app would essentially import it from there. So we have other files like requirements.txt. This is essentially what is needed for us to be able to work, which is a CDK library 2.103.0 constructs. Any of these constructs can be able to work. So we have so many files. We have because we want to create a virtual environment. Why? If I fail to create a virtual environment, it would still work. It's going to work, no problem with that. But I will need to install this in my laptop. Essentially, that is not what I want. I just want to install these dependencies when I'm working on this environment, and then I'm done. So I do not need to install everything, let's say on VS Code or somewhere else. I just need to install them in a virtual environment. If I do not want to work again with them, I can be able to delete. So when I delete, it's gone. So that is, I would need to activate a virtual environment here. Depending on the system that you are using, you can see here it's saying how you can activate. So there are a few commands here telling you what to do. If you do CDKLS, you're essentially listing the stacks, synth, you're synthesizing, CloudFormation template, CDK deploy, CDK diff, and CDK docs if you want to open the documentation. But let's do the first thing that we want to do to activate our virtual environment. I'm on Windows. So what I'm going to do is, essentially this is where I want, how to activate this. I want to move from this virtual environment to scripts. And for me, because I'm on Windows, I need to activate using this file, which is activate.ps1. So this is the path, /scripts/activate.ps1. If I click on that, you can see now I'm inside the virtual environment. So for anything that I'm doing, let's say if I want to install anything, essentially I would be installing it in this virtual environment. For those on Mac, for those on Ubuntu, probably it's source, but it won't be the same as this. It's gonna be a little bit different, because something that you need to note is anytime, or the first time I did run the command, it noticed that I'm on Windows. And to prove that, if I open this file that is called app, you can see at the top how it does. Okay, let me enlarge the screen again. How is that? How is that? Let me close this side window. That's better. All right. Let me see. All right. So if you look at the top here, if you take this file and take it to Ubuntu, it might not work unless you specify this. But it just detected that I'm on Windows, and then it downloaded these files. If I run the same on my Ubuntu environment, this would be different. So essentially, you don't need to worry about that. Again, I said it's intelligent. It's going to just be able to detect that. But I'm in my virtual environment. You can see as soon as I go to AWS CDK, it starts complaining. It throws an error, meaning something is missing and I need to install it. So I need to install AWS CDK. And the same would happen if I open this directory, which is what I told you, that we're going to be modifying our resources from here. So you can see there are a lot of complaints from VS Code. Essentially, it's telling me something is missing. So how do I get started to be able to install what is missing? I told you what is missing is in requirements.txt. And you can just modify this file depending on how you want. If you want to work with an EC2 instance only, then I can just do EC2. But I would want to install all the CDK library. So what I'm going to do is pip install -r, and then the file is requirements.txt. So that would install this. It's going to take a moment to install that. And all this is going to be installed in the virtual environment, because again, remember I created the virtual environment so that it can be installed. And just look at the size again. I know somebody did ask, how large is this? You can see it's KBs. Let's see the size of the others. I know it's not that large. Probably it's around, usually around 50 or something, 50 MBs but the whole file with all what has been downloaded is usually close to 500, 700 MBs. So it's gonna take a moment just to install all this, and then we would be good. So as soon as it's done, you would notice that the errors that were here would disappear. And it's just installing all this. So the errors that were there would disappear as soon as everything is installed. Let's give it a moment. So there we go. It has installed everything. Essentially, it has installed whatever was in requirements.txt, which is what is needed. And now you can see it's not like it's gonna eat much of your space. So let me clear my screen because I've enlarged it so much. But again, you can, if you want to upgrade PIP, you can see it's complaining a little bit and telling me, I need to get the latest version of PIP. Not necessary for now. Something that I would want to show you, I've configured my CLI before. If I run AWS configure, you can see it should give me something that is my access key. That is my secret access key. This is the region that I usually work in, which is US West 2. I would want to change it to probably US East 1 so that we can just see something. So let me change it to US East 1. And then I would remain with the output as JSON, so I do not need to change the output. Just to confirm that we would be working in US East 1, and we are good. So let's go to the console and look at what is happening in US East 1. So I have my environment here. I have my console here, visible, I believe, or you want me to zoom out a little bit? Yeah, good. So let me go to CloudFormation. This was US West 2, so I just need to switch to East 1. Just give it a second to load from Oregon to, should be Northern Virginia. US East 1, Northern Virginia. I just want you to look at my my CloudFormation console and see that probably there could be nothing. There are no stacks. Yeah, you can see there are no stacks. We've not done anything with our file, our CDK. You can see this is where we write our constructs, what we want. If you want to create an S3 bucket, this is where we're going to be doing it. But I would want to run, you can see also here at the top, there is nothing in terms of the out and the like. I would want to run CDK synth, synth, and let's see what happens. So it's gonna again take a moment because it's going to prepare the environment. As I said, we would see also the output on this terminal as soon as it's ready. And also if I switch to the console, I should see probably something happening. So not at the moment, still not yet. Let's go back. It usually takes a moment to create that. So you can see, if I go to out and look at this, you can see everything is empty. Essentially, there is no resource that I've created. So I've not created the resource. That would be filled. This is how CloudFormation looks like. So this would be filled as soon as we start adding resources. So let's do Bootstrap, CDK, Bootstrap, and watch. If we go to our console, we should probably see something getting created after a while. Bootstrap version. No, we don't need a version. You can see it's picking. I just changed this on the terminal. It's just picked US East 1. You can see it's just creating essentially what is necessary, which we said it's a bucket, and I am role that will be required. Again, if I refresh this, because we've seen there is action on the console, you can see something is created. I'm switching so that you can just see that something is happening even without us creating any resource. We've not created any resource yet, but you can see it's telling me that this is what is going to be created. So there is a bucket, there is a role, SSM parameter, ECR repo, and all that. So everything has been created for me. And I said, for this, you usually need to run it once. So now that when it's complete, I'm going to be having an environment in US East 1. So I told you previously I was working in the other region, which is Oregon. Now I'm in Northern Virginia. So you can see it has done everything. If I go to the console, just to be able to look at, again, CloudFormation, you can see this is created, it's complete. I open it. So this is the name that is usually given by default. You don't need to change this. If I go to resources, you can see the resources that have been created. The same thing was the output on the terminal. Again, I've not created any resource up to now. It's just initialized the environment so that anytime I start now deploying my resources, it becomes kind of easy. So you can see there is a bucket. In this bucket, it's where it's the staging bucket. You can see we have the role and all those. Again, done for you. All these resources have been created for me. Now, let's get to the interesting part now of doing something, probably creating our own bucket. So here it's telling you how to go about it. So if you want to use a resource, let's say such as SQS, so what you just need to do is AWS _SQS. Essentially, you're importing that resource and you import it as SQS. And this is the code on how you're going to do it. At the bottom, this is how you write your code. So let's clear the terminal down here. Allow me to minimize this because I think it looks better. So let me delete this template. We just know that the code is going to be here. And let me show you something. Assuming that we want to use S3, and we saw that on the other side, when we were looking at the slide, it says something like S3.bucket. That is what it said, something like S3.bucket. But look at, it's not giving me the proper suggestions. Why? Because I've not imported the construct. So I just need to import the construct here. And it's as easy as saying AWS _S3. And I want to import this as S3. And I'm good to go now. A comma would do. And now I can come and start creating my resources. So I can call my bucket. You can give it a variable. You can create a variable. Remember, we're using Python. Or if you don't want, you can omit that. I can say S3 dot bucket. You can see now the suggestions are coming. I want to create a bucket for this resource. So it's usually self. And now I can give it a logical name. Logical name could be my bucket. And we can test that. Okay, is my screen still visible? Or I need to reshare again? Visible, eh? Okay, not minimized. So we would just, let me reshare. I know probably it's not. Okay, resume. Should be now. Yeah, so we are creating a resource, which is S3. We're using S3 construct to create a resource. We've not given a variable name. So let's run this and see what happens, because I told you something is going to be created. The first bootstrap was just to create the environment. Now we want to create a resource that is called S3. Let's run this again. You want to list your stacks. If you want, when you list CDK ls, it usually tells you if there is an error. You do synth. It's going to synthesize, and let me come here. If we look at our CDK template.json, there wasn't much resources here. It was just kind of empty and all that. Even when you look at this, everything was kind of empty. But now that we've edited and added something like an S3, let's see if there's going to be a change. So let's run synth and see what happens. So essentially, we've said synth would convert this, which is in our language, to a CloudFormation template. So let's see if that would work. So if there is an error with synth, you would also get. If there is an error when you run CDKLS, you would still get the same. So you can see we have something here, but let's open it from this side so that you can have a good view. We are creating a bucket, which is S3. Previously, this was in there, and we didn't give much information. So we would still give information as we progress, but that is what we are doing. So we've seen we have something. So the next thing is just to create, to deploy, not create. So CDK deploy, and bam. Let's go to CloudFormation and have a look at what is happening. Remember, there was a stack that was created first, but I told you the first stack was just to prepare the environment. Now, another stack should be coming, and that stack should create the resource that we've just suggested. So if we go back here, we would also see the output on this screen when the resource gets created. So let's give it a moment. So it has started. So probably if I go to the console, I should see some action now. If I go here, in a moment, something should be coming up. Let's go back here. So it's deploying now, creating the change set. Let's see if there is something that has come up. Yeah, you can see now. Again, demo, S3 demo stack. Remember, that is the name of our folder. If we open it, we can see the progress of essentially what is happening. We have the events here. This is essentially what is happening, and the resources that are going to be created, which is essentially an S3 bucket. From our code, we just wanted S3 bucket, not anything fancy. So that's why we have just that. So it's just creating. Let's give it a moment so that it can finish. We can also refresh to see if creation should be complete. It tends to believe if we go to stacks. So creation is complete. So we've created an S3 bucket. If we go to S3, we should see a bucket. Something to do with S3 demo, because that is what the name that we are using, S3 demo. We should see something to do with that. Let's just check. We have, this is the stack and S3 demo is here. Now, let's just look at some properties of this bucket, because we might want to modify a few properties here and there. So properties, everything seems as a normal bucket. Anytime you create a bucket without anything. I don't know by now, if you look at what we've done, this is the amount of code that we've written to create an S3 bucket by now. In CloudFormation, probably this is not what you do. Probably you usually write more code than what we've just done in writing this. Now, with S3, again, we said you need some knowledge on AWS. So needing some knowledge on AWS, you know that sometimes we have the bucket name, we might have versioning, we have a lot of things when we're creating a bucket. So let's see if we can add something. Let's say bucket name and call it, let's call it what? Testing 015 bucket, something of that sort. We can also do something else on our bucket. If, let's say, we want to enable versioning, remember we can enable versioning in our bucket. So essentially, again, anytime I type this, you can see up here, we are getting some suggestions. You can see with versioning, it's a Boolean. So essentially, we can just say true because we want to have our versioning enabled. So with true, it should work now. I can just save that and run that. Just a few changes that I've made to our bucket, adding the name and just adding versioning. Again, what I just need to do, because we understand our code is good, there are no errors. So let's do CDK diff so that we can see. Would it notice that there's a difference between this code and what is in our environment? So CDK diff, let's have a look. Can pull this a little bit up. Can even close this side panel and look at CDK diff. So it's just checking. We should get some output here telling us if there is any difference between whatever is in our code and whatever is in cloud. So you can be able to use this if you're working with others and you just want to see if the environment has changed or if there are any differences since the last time the environment was created. All right, so we're having an error. It should be saying what? Invalid. Invalid S3. So let's see. Okay, let's do away with this. Let's just do the versioning first.
It's coming from the bucket's name, yes. It said it should be small letters.
Oh, yeah. So let's change that. Let's change this to testing. Let's clear the screen. And let's deploy. Yeah, let's deploy. So CDK deploy again. Not deploy, we should have run. Yeah, let me cancel that. CDK diff, so that we can see the differences. I hope the deploy didn't work. Right. Let's give it a moment. All right, so it's there. All right, now we can see. So what is going to happen is, you can see the green part with the plus sign. Essentially what we usually see on the other side, we having this added and also we having versioning enabled. So we can be able just to see that something is going to be happening. So the bucket name that was used before, which was randomly generated, now we are changing that to this. And we are also enabling versioning. So you can now do deploy. You comfortable or are you okay with the changes that are going to be made? So you can just do CDK deploy and you are good to go. So in the console, if we go and check how our bucket was previously, it was disabled. So let me just log in again and reshare my screen. Right, should be there. So if we check on our bucket now, previously, so it's checking versioning, disabled. Let's just give it a moment, because if we go to our stack, you can see it's yet to deploy. So it's still loading. So as soon as it's deployed and everything is complete, we should be having versioning enabled in our bucket. So there we go. So all that. And we should be good. So you can see the amount of work that is being done for you. So for you, it's just to be aware of when I'm creating resources, what do I need, and just avoiding the syntax errors that might be there, and you're good to go. So you can see change set now, it's getting deployed, and the amount of code that we're writing, it's minimal. If we open our file just to be able to see the code that is getting generated for whatever we're doing, you can see it's a lot. You can see all this. So if you were to do a CloudFormation template, this is what you would essentially what you would write. This is essentially what you would write. But you can see the amount of code that we're writing on our side. It's just one single line with a few properties. So update is complete. Just took this amount of seconds. If we go to our environment, versioning was disabled. Let's just reload this. We should be getting something different. Disabled, let's just give it a second. Let's go back to our buckets. Okay, it's this. This is the bucket that we're working with. It's testing because we've just changed the name. Let's go to properties, and we've enabled versioning. We can also keep on modifying the resource depending on how we want. So you can see it's quite easy to work with this. Changes that you want to initiate, you can be able to see that. You can also, whatever is happening in CloudFormation, in the CloudFormation console, it's essentially again happening here. So if I go to CloudFormation, you would see this progress. So I'm able to track what is happening by looking at the progress in this window, telling me this is happening, bucket is getting created, this is getting deleted, and so on and so forth. So telling me just essentially what is happening on the console. So that's how you keep modifying the resources when you're getting started. But if you're just sure of what you want to do, you can be able to do all this in a second. Now, this is just one resource that we've created. Probably you could be having a question, what if I want to create 10 resources? How am I going to do that? So you just need to import the construct here, and you work with whatever you're doing. AWS _ let's say EC2, it's what we want to work with. We want to import as EC2, a comma, and you come down here and start using EC2. So EC2 dot, whatever you want, and then you can just start from there. So that's how we usually use this EC2.instance. You can see the parameters that are required. We need the instance tag, AMI, VPC, and the like. Just essentially what we said, that you need to know the resources. What do I need to create this resource? So resource 1, resource 2, just remember that we're using this construct, the construct of that. You want to use any other resource, essentially that is how you would go. So this is essentially what I wanted to show you. Much more of our introduction. Probably that next time we're meeting, we might do much more. But I would want to give you a few resources. Can you use existing YAML JSON template? Not really, because remember we're using this language. So unless you just want, no, you can't, because you will just need to go to the console and upload that. But here, look at the languages that we're using. We're using Python as a language. We're using, let's say, JavaScript as a language, and that's why it might not be possible. But The JSON and the YAML is using L1 construct to be able just to create the resources. Now, once we are done, CDK destroy would just delete the stack that I created for the S3 bucket, not for the bootstrap. For the bootstrap, you might need to delete that. You also need to ensure that for S3 buckets, I know if you've been working with AWS a lot, you notice that sometimes S3 buckets might not get deleted when they were created when we were using some resources. So also that's something that you need to be aware. You need also to say when you destroying, you can be able to delete the bucket. But that's how you create these resources. So I want to share with you, I think should be a link with resources. I know you might probably want to get started and look at some of this. Here is a link from the official AWS GitHub where you can just check. I'm not championing for Python, but any language that you are comfortable with and you want to work with, you can see we have repos for that. We have TypeScript, we have Python, Java, Go, and the like. So you just need to come and look at the resources. But I would tell you to lean much more on the documentation just to be able to get an idea of what is happening. So this is a good resource that you can use. That is one of the resources. I think you can utilize that. We should be having another resource, which is CDK workshops. Let me see if I have that. CDK workshops. Yep. So this is another good resource that you can make use of. Again, you can see we have Python workshops. If you do not want to, you want to focus on another language like TypeScript, just come to TypeScript. They would deploy an app, just guide you through deploying an app all the way to the end. Again, you can make use of this. Just make use of the language that you would want to know about creating bucket with objects already. Does the command delete all at once via console, or you have to empty your buckets first? Because even if I go to, I think I should be having a bucket that is somewhere. If I want to delete the bucket, it would tell me first you need to empty what is in the bucket. So it's still the other logic that we usually follow, that a bucket, if it's not empty, it cannot be deleted. Let's see, we have this. If I come and say delete this, it shouldn't work, because it's going to give me the error that I need to empty the bucket first. Yeah, you see? Yeah, so essentially this is again what you need to do. Still the logic that is usually followed. I meant using CDK, I doubt. Because you're going to find you'll need to empty the bucket first, but you can just do that manually, the emptying of the bucket. Okay. All right. Sorry, I hope just seeing the chat that somebody was on a different screen, Raymond, but I hope now you good. So that is essentially what I wanted to show you. Do check out the links, the 2 links that I've shared with you, just to have an idea. Use GitHub just to get an idea. Lean on documentation a lot just to be able to learn. There are good examples, more so when you go to AWS documentation, not CDK per se, when you go to AWS documentation just to get to see the resources, and try using L2 construct and see how good it is as compared to L1. Anybody with a question before I stop sharing my screen? Okay, with destroy, we just need to say yes, and we are good to go. All right. So thank you very much for your time and listening to me. I hope that was insightful and you've learned something. Thank you. Back to Evans.
All right. Thank you so much, Felix, for that amazing wonderful presentation. I mean, like, I got to learn about importing constructs, updating stacks, deleting resources. I mean, it's a lot. I've learned a lot on a personal level. I don't know about you. I hope you got something to take home with. Yeah. Hope you didn't waste your 1 hour right here. But I know you guys have something in mind and you're gonna do best with it come in the future. So do you guys have any other questions? I don't want to lock it up for anyone. Do you guys have anything to say? Maybe a suggestion, a comment? Yeah? That was a nice session, Felix. That was a really nice session. Yeah. So, guys, I'm giving you like a minute to post your questions if you have any. Yeah, I can't see any coming on the chats. So, you guys are okay. So, if no other questions, then we have to close this meeting. And thank you all for attending this webinar. So, I hope it does good to your professional experience. And I hope that you get to use it. And I hope that you get like the best value out of what you've learned today. So all the best in your endeavors. And see you guys in meetings. Thank you guys for attending the webinar. From outside as CloudForce, it's a goodbye for now. Cheers.